All right. Well, Tom, see, the problem, here's the problem. Let me tell you about the big problem with having Tom Kelly on the show is that we can't see what jacket he's wearing or what shirt he's wearing. Right?
You know, it is, I don't have air conditioning in my house, which is great for recording purposes, but it's currently like 88 degrees, so there is no jacket.
Oh.
I am looking super disgusting, so I'm glad there's no video. Greasy hair stuck to the forehead.
Oh.
Dorito crumbs stuck in my chest hair. It is,
Wow.
it's a bad situation over
Wow,
here.
typical podcast editor life there. All right, well, let's get this started before we get too much into it. Ow! Again! Oh, my headphones are so loud. Oh, my goodness gracious, you made it to the Podcast Engineering Show. Welcome. My name is Chris Curran. I produce podcasts for a bunch of big companies, a bunch of medium companies, and every week on this show, we bring you podcast production techniques on a silver platter. I actually have a silver platter right here. You can't see it, but it's here, and on it, I have podcast production techniques. All right, that doesn't make any sense. But anyway, we talk shop. We really talk shop with podcast producers and engineers and other specialists. And I have a background in the audio engineering, in the music business. And since I entered podcasting about 8 years ago, I've noticed a huge lack of audio skills in podcasting. And that's why I created this show, so that podcasters and podcast editors and producers, so we can have this conversation of in-depth professional audio production. If you implement the best of what you learn here, guess what'll happen? You know what'll happen? Your podcasts will sound a lot better and you'll spend less time producing them. I mean, that's a twofer.
That sounds good to me.
I mean, right? And of course, Barry's here with me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And of course, the next Podcast Engineering School. Well, we do 4 of them a year, so check the website to see when the next semester is. If you or anyone wants to learn how to produce podcasts professionally, that's what Podcast Engineering School is for. And today we have Tom Kelly, audio engineer, podcast producer, podcast editor. His company is called Clean Cut Audio. And let's do it right for Tom Kelly, everybody. Let's go! Tom, welcome, brother.
Thank you. Super happy to be here finally.
Wow. This has been a long time coming.
It has. Man, that keep the applause going.
Yeah, you want to keep going? They kind of get a little energetic as it goes. Dude. And someone brought a lightsaber. I mean, who brings a lightsaber to a podcast? All right, anyway.
That's all right. I have my Master Sword and the Highland Shield from Zelda right behind me, so I'm readily armed.
Right?
Ready for battle.
Yeah. Everyone go check out. You're on Instagram, Tom?
Yeah, I've got a couple pics up there.
All right. Yeah. Anyway, go look at some visuals of Tom Kelly, and you're very fashionable, if I may say so.
Wow, you can say that. Thank you. I appreciate
that's
it.
a compliment. That's really a compliment. All right, so let's get into this. Tom, you know the drill. We do the speed round first. First of all, we're going to get into, because you produce and edit a lot of podcasts. So I love talking to people like you who are in the trenches every day, getting it done, fixing problems, pulling your hair out. And but let's start with your audio setup. So wait, you don't have your own show though, do you?
I've got a couple of them, yeah.
Oh, you got a couple. Tell me what your shows are.
Yeah, so my main show is Reminiscent. It is a kind of comedy-based podcast to talk with my best friend about our favorite bands, mostly pop punk from the early 2000s. Take a look at how it affected us back then and what it still means to us now. Break down some music videos that don't warrant any kind of breakdown because they're so stupid, and just kind of try to find the comedy in all the bad music that was coming out at the time.
Cool.
That's a fun one. We have a spinoff where we talk about a novel series that the host of that show and I are writing. And I also have a podcast with a colleague, Matthew Passy, called Podcast Me Anything. It's a Q&A podcast, and all of them are on summer break right now. So totally focused on the business.
See, I should have known all this. You and Matthew Passy doing a show? Dude.
Yeah, it's a good time.
Cool. So, all right. So let's say pick one of your shows. Let's do the speed round on it. And
Sure.
so when you're getting ready to record one of your shows, take us through the entire process. So first start with, what microphone you're using, where it's plugged in, what gear it goes through, and then where you're recording it, how you're connecting with your guests. Like, give us the quick overview, and then we'll pick through it for the rest of the episode.
Sure. Yeah, I use an SM7B through some kind of mic cable I made myself about 10 years ago. Couldn't tell you much about it because it's been a while. Into an Apogee Ensemble interface, plugged into a maxed out 2018 MacBook Pro. Checked all the options on that guy. And going into Pro Tools version 2019.6, which is the latest release. Mac, obviously. And it's a pretty simple signal chain. I'm pretty happy with it. Looking to upgrade to some UA Apollo interfaces in the future. But for right now, this is what I'm working with. Pretty happy with it.
Cool. And then, so as far as connecting on the internet with guests and co-hosts, how do you do that?
So I like all of my resources to be dedicated to Pro Tools while I'm recording. So we talk over Skype on my cell phone, and I have one earbud in my left ear. We talk over that, and then we record a double ender. So then I'm recording into Pro Tools on my computer with headphones over both my ears with just the one ear to hear over Skype, and I'm kind of doing a little two headphone situation there. But it reduces any dropped samples or anything like that because Pro Tools is, I've got a 6-core computer and it wants all of them for itself. It's pretty greedy and needy, so
wow.
Try to keep it as light as possible on the CPU end, yeah.
Wow.
And then he'll Dropbox me the file and sync it together, and never really had any issues. He's recording with Pro Tools first, I believe, and yeah, just make it sound good after that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Right. So this is great. So we're going to talk about the Apogee Ensemble because that's a $2,500 audio interface. So
yeah.
I want to get into that. And you're using Pro Tools, which most podcast, producers and editors don't use. So do you do all your editing in Pro Tools when you like editing for other clients and stuff?
Yeah, I've never used anything else. I started audio production 11 years ago. I went to a 4-year program, which would not recommend 0 out of 10 on that guy. But we learned Pro Tools, so that's the only DAW I've ever used. I have my workflow down, and really no need to move anywhere from there.
Got it. So, all right. So you record. Well, let's step back. So the Shure SM7B, that's your main microphone. Have you used any other mics beside that one for yourself?
Yeah, I've tried out most of them. I know like the RA20 is the other one that people love, but I just have a lot of like 3K in my voice that microphone seems to accentuate, so it sounds like absolute trash with me. We used a lot of different mics in school. I own a few myself. I really like my AKG Perception 420, which is discontinued at this point, but it's a multi-pattern large diaphragm condenser mic. There's that word podcasters don't like condenser mics, but yeah. It's a really beautiful mic. I love it, but I don't know. I had the SM7B and I wanted to use it out one day, and I liked the way it kind of rolls off some of the high end, so I just stick with that. I think it does well for my voice.
Well, dude, if you ever do a show about marijuana, you got to use the 420 mic. Oh, come on, people. Dude, blowing smoke into the condenser, into the diaphragm of the mic. Come on.
There might be a market for a weed podcast hosted by a straight edge host. Maybe. I don't know.
Wow. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Different perspective.
Oh, God. So, all right. So you got the SM7B. All right. So the Apogee Ensemble. So here's my idea in the big picture of this episode. I want to go through some of the gear you're using and stuff. Let's just go through that. Then I want to step back to some of your experience with music, because I know you have a lot of experience with music production in the studio and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And then a little bit about how you're, again, producing and editing shows for clients, because I know you're doing a lot of episodes, like 10, 15, 20 episodes a week, something like that?
I'm averaging like 18. I've had weeks up to 22 a week.
Man.
But yeah.
Yeah, so you're
in the trenches.
Yeah, you're knocking it out. So, all right, but let's go through the equipment first. So the Apogee Ensemble, I just pulled it up here. And I was just going to say, I pulled it up in my Chrome browser. And then that made me think of Dave Jackson, who on his podcast rodeo show, he always says, our good friends at Apple Podcasts say, when he reads the description of the show that he's reviewing.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I haven't seen, I forgot to ask him about this. I'm going to see him soon. And I'm going to be like, dude, I don't know why. I mean, I know why he's saying Apple Podcasts because that's where he's looking, but like, why? Like, it's just the description of their show. You could look at that in any app. So why is he like highlighting and pretending like Apple Podcasts is the main place? Although it kind of is the main place, but in a way it's not. They're just a private company. So I don't know.
It's the cred points, man. You want to get in with Apple. That's what everyone wants.
Yeah, I guess so. Anyway. That's true. Because I've had some complaints about Apple, and I've asked people who are like buddy with Apple, and they're like, no, Apple's great. They've done a lot for the industry. And it's like,
don't let them hear you.
Yeah. It's like, really? Like what? Criticizing Apple is something you can't do it. It's not politically correct or something. I mean, thank God they created podcasting, but let's not believe everything they've done has been wonderful and rosy and great. I mean, they've dragged their feet on so much over the years. I mean, how long did it take them to have a dedicated podcast app? And now that just this year they're changing all the categories because the categories were completely inadequate for 14 years.
Certainly long enough.
I mean,
that's what lack of competition will get you.
Exactly. So anyway, I hope everyone enjoyed that rant. That rant is brought to you by the Apogee Ensemble.
Our friends at Apogee.
Our friends at Apogee brought us the Ensemble. Anyway, it's a 30 in and 34 out Thunderbolt 2 audio interface, man. This thing is a beast, right?
Well, I got to tell you, I am still rocking like the old Firewire 400 one.
Oh, okay.
I have dongles on dongles on docks on dongles. No. It is insane, but I mean, you can crank it has 75 decibels of gain, and it is 75 decibels of crystal clear gain.
Nice.
I can run the SM7B, maxed out, get a healthy signal, clear as day.
Nice.
But it is a little bottleneck from getting information back and forth. When I had my 2012 Mac Mini, it definitely worked a little bit better, but now the computer is, wondering where all the information is because it just can't keep up with Thunderbolt at this point.
Oh.
So I am looking at getting the Apollo X6 and then putting my Apogee via optical into that to get all the inputs because I do some music as well on the side. So preamps and inputs are important for this guy. But yeah, the new Apogee is great, but they launched it Thunderbolt 2 after Thunderbolt 3 came out. So like, why would you spend that much money on an already outdated piece of technology kind of is right. Where I'm coming from with that. But really killer interface either way. You can not go wrong with this, but certainly more than a podcaster needs. Right. I don't think you need 7.1 surround sound out, but it's there if you want it.
Wow, yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, Apogee's known for their conversion, right? A to D and D to A converters.
Yeah, super. Oh my gosh, man. I paid $250 for this thing because I had a friend who was just looking to clear up some space in his rack.
Right.
So I paid close to nothing for the sickest interface I've ever owned. Yeah, it's treating me well, but it's time. It's time.
Cool. So, all right. So then you got that hooked up to your Mac Mini.
MacBook Pro, I have moved on.
Oh, the MacBook Pro. Okay. Oh, you used to have a maxed out Mac Mini. Got it.
Now I got the maxed out MacBook Pro.
Got it.
Yeah, I travel a lot, so producing that many shows a week, I can't really like take a break from them. So I got to be able to work on the go. So I went the laptop route. It's not ideal, but it is probably the best of both worlds for right now.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so then you're going into Pro Tools. Okay, now Pro Tools, obviously, it's not a DAW that most podcasters or podcast editors or podcast producers use. Almost no one uses it because it's probably the best DAW on the planet, but it's pretty much overkill for podcasting, and plus it costs some serious money. I know they have this new one. What is it called? Pro Tools First. Yeah.
But it is so limited, very, very limited on features.
Yeah, which is weird. It's like, I mean, for instance, I use Reaper, and Reaper is tremendous. I mean, it has so many features. It's crazy, but I'm not saying it's, as far as the core functioning of it, I'm not saying it's on par with Pro Tools, but it ain't far behind, and it has all the features, and it doesn't cost that much. So
it's like $60 one time, right?
Yeah, I mean, if that's for a single person license. But what funny thing about Reaper is, even if you never pay that, you can still use you can use it forever. There's just a little pop-up that comes up and says, your trial period has ended. Please purchase it. And you just click OK, and then you just use it like nothing. So
yeah, that's some pretty new age stuff. I feel like Avid is definitely rooted in more of the old school. Like, I don't want to say overcharging, but they are trying their hardest to get their monies out of people, and it's a huge turnoff for a lot of people. I think they just doubled their renewal rates. I think the program is like $800 one time, and then like $200 a year for upgrades and stuff. It used to be $100. If you don't upgrade, they charge you like $400 at a later time. It is, oh god, it is. It's frustrating, but there's not really much desire to, like, I don't want to say move down from that, but like, it's what I know, so I'm just going to stick with it.
Yeah, exactly. For you, it's what you know, and you can work quickly, and you know it. So it makes it worth it. But yeah, so that, and they charge that money because, again, normally it's used for music production, and music production, especially if someone has a studio with like thousands and thousands of dollars worth of gear, like a couple $100 a year for Pro Tools is pretty much nothing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, in music production, I mean, you're talking millions, multiple millions of dollars for a really high-end studio. So that extra $200 a year not even a blip on the radar. They'll just pay it, whatever.
Right. So it's interesting. So in Pro Tools, you assemble all the tracks. I mean, obviously, if there's individual tracks for each speaker, they get their own track, and then you have the music and everything. Tell us about how you arrange that and build that, and then how you process the audio, and then especially how you edit it in multi-track.
Yeah, I keep my productions rather simple. Music comes in, little intro, same thing every time, fades out as they start talking. I don't do the narratives and the audio dramas with sound design and all that stuff. I'm interested in that, but it takes a lot more time, and I'm trying to do, volume at the moment. Right. So I'm trying to do simpler shows, really just kind of get them out and give the value pretty quickly. So short intros, music on the way out, and that's about it. The processing is what's different for like my own show, because we provide good audio. Right. So the needs are very different. The audio that I'm usually getting from clients or clients of clients, I do a lot of subcontracted work. It's like basically just restoration mode. You can't really get creative or really in detail with a mix, because you're just trying to like make it sound passable, which is really, oh, it's so sad, Chris. Oh my God.
I know.
It breaks my soul as an audio engineer to hear some of the garbage that I get, man. Oh. But, they pay really good money to make it sound better. And then from there, I usually try to upsell some consulting services to teach them how to give me better audio, because, the better it comes in, the better it comes out, pretty much. So lots of isotope for other clients. I'm still on RX6 because it's working. I don't really feel the need to upgrade to 7, especially because I have standard, not the advanced. So I've had some aversions to going advanced because I don't want to receive audio that requires advanced. It's kind of my thinking. Like, if I don't have it, then I just need to demand better audio. So That's where I'm coming from on that guy. But a typical signal chain for my own voice, I don't run any RX because I record in the middle of the night, typically when we're doing our show. So dogs aren't barking, traffic's not going by. I try to get just the cleanest signal. So I don't need any of the noise reduction or anything. Right. Running a lot of Waves plugins. So I'm running de-esser. From there, my favorite EQ plugin of all time is the FabFilter Pro-Q 3. It is, oh my gosh, it's just an insanely powerful plugin that does dynamic EQ as well. It's very transparent. If you ever need to do like really, really harsh adjustments, you can, and you don't get a lot of the artifacting that comes from like analog modeled EQ plugins. So I really like that guy. It has a pre and post visualizer as well, which is really helpful if your ears aren't trained very well. You can kind of see what's going on. You don't want to lean on that too hard, but it's there if you need it. Dynamics are super important. So the next thing I throw in there is usually Vocal Rider, and that's a plugin that I will recommend until the day I die. It is, I mean, to me, it's like the most helpful. It does the heaviest lifting in my signal chain. Not for me specifically, because I'm not a very dynamic speaker, but my co-host especially. It is basically automated automation. So there's people that, manually raise and lower the volume on their podcast, and it could take hours. And with Vocal Rider, I throw it on there and it does it for me. From there, I'm hitting pretty hard an API 2500 compressor from Waves. And it's pretty hard because the Vocal Rider is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. So I guess the settings are aggressive, but it's not really processing it that aggressively because it doesn't need to. The Vocal Rider's lifting, most of the weight there.
Got it.
And I usually throw just like a brick wall limiter on the individual tracks just to make sure no laughing or anything is really clipping. From there, this kind of ties into the music stuff too. From there, I throw all of the vocals to an aux bus. So my mastering plugins are done on an aux bus rather than the master fader. So then you can send the music to the master without getting the processing and the mixing that's done on the voices. Little trick I picked up through doing this so many times. I'll run D-mouth click. My co-host needs it so badly. I don't understand what is going on in that man's cheeks, but it is unlike anything I've ever heard before.
You're talking about Matthew?
No, this is my friend Pat on the music show. I'll usually throw another Pro Q3 on there just to kind of try to glue it all together, a little bit of dynamic EQ on there, because he's using a Blue Yeti, which we can talk about the Blue Yeti if you want. I think it's a great microphone if it's used properly, but there's some things we got to do to kind of glue it together so it sounds like we're in the same space, whatever. And I'll throw some linear phase multi-band compression on that, and from there I do 128 MP3 16-bit. Last thing on there, throw some Dither on there, noise shaping 3, of course, and that's my signal chain. Pretty simple, I guess. It sounds more complicated than it really is. De-essing, EQ, dynamics, out the door.
So the noise shaping 3 dithering, what is that?
So, are you familiar with the Fletcher-Munson curve?
Oh, yes. Well, I teach that in my school, of course.
Yeah. So, for anyone out there, I mean, maybe you can describe it better, but it's basically it models the way the human ear reacts to sound. Am I getting that right? So,
yep.
You have to have like a little more power on the low end in order for it to be perceived as loud as something on the higher end. So with the noise shaping 3 dither, it introduces the random noise adjusted. I think it's A-weighted for the Fletcher-Munson curve. I don't know if there's an audible difference at all, especially in podcasting, but it's, going from 24 to 16. It takes half a second to throw some dither on there and do it properly. So I do it every time. Okay.
And so does it adjust the level of frequencies, kind of like a multi-band compressor or something?
No, it's just leveling out the quantization errors from downsampling from 24-bit to 16. I don't think there's would ever be any audible difference, but it's like quote unquote the proper way I learned to do it in school, so I've just done it.
Cool.
but not affecting frequencies or sound really at all.
Cool. I'm taking notes
Is it
here.
though? Is it cool?
Well, I mean, look, it's what you're doing and you like it and it's working. So
I love it. Yeah.
that's what's cool. I mean, I'm not quite familiar with that, but
It's not a sexy process, it's not talked about a lot. It's not super understood by people, including myself. But all the studios that I worked at, they've really emphasized that, and I trusted the people I worked with. So
the noise shaping 3, what is that, like a individual plugin?
So there's like just different styles of Dither. The one that I use comes with Pro Tools. It's an Avid plugin. And there's noise shaping 1, 2, and 3. And it's unweighted, A-weighted, and B-weighted based on equal power, equal gain. I forget what the other one is. God, it's been a long time, Chris. Like it's since I really dug too much into it. But
Yeah.
just very, very, very minimal noise shaping to something that's usually underneath the noise floor anyway. So it doesn't affect too much, but proper etiquette, whatever.
Yeah, that's interesting because it, like you said, for podcasting, it's probably not even necessary, but it does the same thing. But in music, it might be more helpful because music, you're dealing with a lot more frequencies coming together, and there's a lot of masking and a lot of depth in the music that can be lost if the digital representation isn't perfect or something. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot more signal, so there's a lot more to quantize. So it might not be relevant at all to podcasting, but in music, I could definitely see that being a much greater issue. And that's the world I came from. So that's where most of my knowledge or, processes are based off of.
So after that, you said you mix it down as an MP3, 128 kbps?
Yeah, stereo as well, because for my show, it's a music show. The intro and outro songs are a song that my old band wrote when we were in high school, and I recorded a couple years ago. So if it's a music show, the music has got to sound good. So I'm not going to compromise with a mono file on that one. So
right.
Give the listeners a little more to stream. Sorry, data plan, RIP, but that's not that much.
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing I haven't tried really is because I know some of these shows, like, did someone recently told me, I could be wrong about this, but they said Mark Maron releases his episodes in like 40 kbps, but I think it's like an AAC file, like, an MP4, and maybe with the HE compression on it. So like those AAC files you can go to lower bit rates and it still sounds fine. So
interesting.
Yeah, I haven't messed with that, but I don't know. But here's the thing: so the only reason they're probably doing that is because of the bandwidth. So like when you have a big show and you're getting millions of downloads, like if you cut the file size in half, like you cut the hosting bill in half.
Yeah, that's significant, man. I do not have that issue with my shows, so I can make those files as big as I want, man.
Exactly. I want to put out WAV files, 24-bit.
I saw on a forum, this guy was complaining that, his first issue was hosting on SoundCloud, but he was complaining that SoundCloud only gives you 2 gigs of free file hosting.
Right.
And he was like, that's ridiculous. My episodes are more than 2 gigs each. And it was like, whoa, dude.
That's cool.
Ooh.
Wow,
Bummer.
what are we going? 32-bit, 192K? Jeez.
No. Gotta mix it in surround sound, too.
Oh, I forgot about that. What about the Sennheiser Ambio? We need 3D audio here. Come on, people. I was just looking into that, actually. I saw the Ambio headset at NAB, and it's like $300.
It's not bad.
It's not bad, and Apogee actually designed some of the the processing inside with regards to the conversion, and I don't know about the mic range.
Gotcha.
But anyway, It's
nice.
Yeah, it's like earbuds you wear in your ears, but each earbud has a microphone on it, and then it sort of records as if it's, like binaural. It records as a human would hear it, which sort of is 3D, but I mean, it's not really 3D, but it's sort of 3D. And anyway, those are $300, but it's for Apple only, like iOS only. Like,
gotcha.
You can't use it on an Android or anything, and it's for the phone pretty much. I think it plugs into a phone. But they do make that Ambio mic, the bigger one, that's really expensive. That has 4 mics on it. And it has 4 mics pointing in 4 different directions. And they use that one for gaming in terms of, like, let's say you're playing a video game and you're walking forward and there's people shooting at you from the left and people shooting at you from the right? And so when you hear it through let's say through your TV, you hear a gun on the left and you hear a different gun on the right? But in the game, if you turn to the left, now you're facing that gun on the left. So now that gun on the left is actually going to come through the center of the stereo spectrum of your TV.
Yeah.
And then the other gun, which was on the right, was going to come from more behind you. So it's like that, the Ambio mic with the 4 mics, it records the audio, and then when someone wearing like a VR headset turns their head, it actually turns the whole spectrum. So it makes it much more realistic. So if something's on your left, you hear it on your left, but then you turn to look at it, now it's in front of you because you're looking right at it, right?
Oh, man. Yeah, that sounds, especially in VR, that stuff is blowing my mind lately. I definitely have surround sound in the living room, and I am much better at Doom on Nintendo Switch in surround sound because you can hear the things behind you. You know where they are. It's not just left or right.
Wow.
It's crucial, almost mandatory in video gaming for sure. And we had some surround sound mics in school that were a lot of fun. I'm not sure what the brand was. It looked like an egg, and it had 6 mics in it, and you could just record with it and then throw it in a surround sound mix on Pro Tools and just hear it, and it sounds so realistic. It's mind blowing what some of the tech out there can do, man. Oh. Yeah, and we barely get to touch it, or we don't touch it at all in podcasting, which is kind of what makes me sad most of the time. There's so much cool stuff out there, and we're banished to the $60 microphones here, but that's the focus for right now, so I'm going with it.
My idea for the $300 Ambio headset thing, or the earbuds, whatever, they're more technically earbuds, but I thought, that'd be cool to do a podcast in 3D audio, and just you have to tell your listeners, like, hey, I'm gonna, I'm walking through a crowd, and like, listen with your earbuds or your headphones so you can get the 3D effect. And I'm like, that would be, I mean, that's cool. I'm not saying it's not cool, but like, what's the what's the further purpose of it? Like, what? Okay, fine, it sounds cool, but then what? It always comes down to then what.
It sounds more like an exercise in sound design than something that could really work in practice, but I love it.
Right, exactly. So, all right, so you're making MP3s at 128 kbps stereo, and then who do you host with?
Libsyn, always, forever.
Yeah, me too.
Oh yeah.
All right, so then okay, and the final LUFS level of the mix, how are you setting that level? Is it just by ear or by eye, or with RX?
So, I use the Waves WLM meter on my master channel there. Yeah, -16 LUFS, LKFS, whatever now, you're feeling at the time.
Since you're an engineer, I've always wanted to ask this question, but I don't ever think I've thought of the question when I was talking to an audio engineer. So when you're looking at so here's the thing with the meters that isn't perfect, is that they move.
Yes.
So, if someone says something loud, it'll go louder than, let's say, -16 LUFS. And if someone's talking really low, it'll be lower. It'll be like -20 maybe. So how do you just ballpark it in your mind? Like, oh, this is sort of averaging around -16, or is there a more precise way to do it?
Well, the plugin that I have has short-term, long-term, and then the dynamic range. But I think the important thing in audio is how it sounds. So I do a lot of A/B between shows that I know sound great, they have a healthy level, and I try to use my ears for as much as I can. You know, I'll look at the meter just to check something, but I know that it definitely does. It weights the lower end quite a healthy amount, so it's not super reliable when it comes to like certain frequencies coming through. So I'll kind of ballpark it with the plug-in, but ultimately just use my ears is usually the best advice to give someone in audio. Use your ears. But I have found it pretty helpful over the past few years. Before I got into podcasting, I've never heard of a LUFS before. I always did the RMS in decibels, you know, and that's how I measured the output. Right. But yeah, get a ballpark, listen, make sure it sounds good, and call it a day.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So that's awesome. I mean, we could go into each of these things way more, but forever. I want to go back to your days, you know, producing music. So start from when you got out of school and tell us like where you were working, what kind of music you were working on, and what you were doing, and just, you know, maybe sort of outline your whole journey through the studios and what you did.
Yeah, I did a lot out of school. It was mostly on a volunteer/intern basis, because I found out upon graduating that the American dream is more or less dead, and $110,000 of student loans doesn't guarantee you any income. So I pretty much stayed working at this coffee shop that I was working at all through college. I was a competitive barista in the DC area. And
wait, hold on. Competitive barista.
Yeah, so
who did you compete against?
Other baristas, like in
doing
the
what?
Like, so we did latte art and hand pours, so pour overs and stuff like that.
Oh,
and it was they judged you on presentation and taste, and it was fun. It was a good distraction from what I should have been doing at the time, which was more audio production. But it kind of taught me about the intricacies of things that are hard to explain, like how to properly taste a cup of coffee is something that people don't really come across, and it's really hard to communicate that. And there's a lot of similarities in audio of how to express. There's too much of a certain frequency. It's too crunchy, boomy, boxy, airy, you know, whatever. There's like, you got to figure out how to translate that to someone who doesn't really know the lingo. So there's some things there that kind of played off each other, which I did enjoy. But
that's cool.
When I wasn't,
So what's the correct way to taste a cup of coffee? I mean, black, right? You have to drink it black, right?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Oh man, it is. So when you're doing a pour over, man.
Oh, by the way, pour overs you said pour over, and now I want one. Those are my favorite thing in the world, I think.
But it's got to be filtered, not screened. None of those metal filters, man. I am the kind of just like the pickiest person in general, but especially in coffee and audio. Yeah, I mean, you can get your temperature down to like 1/10 of a degree, and the direction and the speed at which you pour the water over the coffee, how fine the grind is, measure the coffee to the 1/10 of a gram, you measure the amount of time you're pouring the coffee. There's like 9 different variables that all affect the final taste. And it's similar with like, you know, wine or beer or audio. So if you're really into very minute details, you would like any of those things, I feel like.
Cool, yeah. Oh, that's awesome, man. I love that.
Yeah. So like out of college, I was still recording friends. I was in a couple bands I played drums in a few, sang in a few. I can play guitar and bass, so I kind of do all that, record the one-man band thing. And I had a lot of friends in the scene, so they would come over and for like, you know, $15 an hour or something, record an EP with me. And I was kind of one of the guys that producers didn't like because I was offering like a really budget service, and it wasn't super good because I wasn't great at the time. I was still learning, and I was, you know, diminishing the appreciation for like a really high-end expensive recording, which is funny because that's kind of what we deal with now in podcasting. You get the person producing an hour-long episode for $4 or something. So God. It's hard to have people see the value in paying, you know, $150, $200, $250, whatever. But recording bands, I interned at a really awesome metalcore studio up in Maryland, and they put out just consistently songs and albums that ranked on Billboard. And I felt super, super lucky to work there for a while. They did offer me a job, but it like wasn't enough to pay my student loans. So I was working, I lived in Virginia at the time. I was managing a coffee shop in DC and then interning at a recording studio in Maryland. So 6 days a week, I drove through 3 states, like 80 or 90 miles round trip.
Oh.
Wasn't getting paid for like 8-hour days at the studio. And there was like no parking in my neighborhood. So I would have to park like half a mile away. I would leave for work at 4:30 in the morning and get home around midnight. Oh. And I did that for like 4 months. Oh.
Wow.
But I'll tell you what, man, working at that recording studio is what set up my like career as a podcast editor. Cause I was comping vocals and editing drums, and the genre of like metal or metalcore, it is very polished, very produced. So your raw drum tracks are 18 tracks, and then it's bounced or it's mixed into like 30 or 35 tracks. And I had to edit, 30 tracks simultaneously. And since drums are nothing but like rhythm, you really have to just listen for the rhythm while you're editing. So now in podcasting, you can edit out all the ums in the world, but if the rhythm is off, it's probably better if you just left it unedited, in my opinion anyways. So learning how to listen during an edit and how to edit efficiently has been life-changing for me. And when I started there, it was taking me like 4 hours to edit a 3.5 minute song. And by the time I left, it was down to like 35 minutes because he really taught me like how to always be looking at how to be more efficient and using different input devices with program buttons to do your most used tasks. And that's why I can do so many shows a day, because, muscle memory, a proper workflow, and speed is accuracy plus efficiency. So efficiency is a huge factor in that. So the more efficient you are, just the more you can get done without getting sloppy by just moving too fast.
Right.
It's definitely not the way to approach it. But so yeah, the studio was kind of like the most impactful experience that I had, but I also did live sound at a music venue. I was live streaming bands, doing audio and video. I was doing audio for like small local commercials. I had video editing for them, doing my own studio stuff. I kind of just tried to do everything because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do in the space.
Right.
Because the one thing I did learn at the studio is that I hate recording bands. I thought that I would, which, again, I just did a 4-year degree on recording bands and found out that I hated it. And these were very good bands that were signed to record labels. So like, if I can't enjoy working with like the best of the best, it's just not going to work out. So I kind of took all that experience, and I was working at a wood shop outside of DC. Remembered there was a word called podcasts and people listened to them, never listened to one before, and kind of just like fell in love with it, started listening for 9 hours a day during work. And I thought like, man, podcasts are just audio. Like I have the audio experience. I have an insane amount of editing experience because that was always what I kind of geared towards in school anyways. Like my college roommate and I, we would kind of delegate, we'll call it, tasks. So he would record all of my projects and his, and then I would edit both of ours. So we kind of, quote unquote, shared some duties during college there. Nice. But I figured like, I'm sure I can make money editing podcasts, right? Like that's the thing. And I wasn't really sure if it was at the time. And I figured I can edit drums, but I've never done a podcast. So I should probably start my own podcast and just learn by doing. So I ended up starting 3 podcasts for myself and friends. I edited 3 shows a week for about a year until I started seeking clients and wanted to have like all the experience I needed before I really went for it. And it all happened pretty quickly. I went from like 0 clients to self-employed in less than a year. And it's been awesome ever since, really.
Cool. So now your production workflow with all your clients, I'm assuming it's similar to what we just talked about of what you do for your show, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's mostly Dropbox. I try to avoid Google Drive if I can. But yeah, they Dropbox me files. I upload it to Libsyn, and I rarely ever communicate with my clients. I have my own Trello board to keep everything organized. I have a massive spreadsheet of every podcast I've ever edited, the client name of the show, audio length, how long it took to edit it, how much I got paid, the hourly, and whether or not they've paid me, and what the status is, if it's completed or whatever. So I keep pretty good tabs on everything I've ever done. And I've, because of that, never missed an episode for a client, never really lagged behind on any projects. If workflow is like the most important thing in the world to me, and I do it entirely through Trello, Slack, and Dropbox.
That's awesome, man. I agree with you. I do the same thing. I have a very systematic approach to production, and I have my systems in place, and I always do it the same way. And it just really helps so much, so that, like you said, you don't miss anything. That's the big fear, right? It's like, hey man, my show's got to go live in 10 minutes. Where's the edit? And you're like, what?
Yeah, that is a nightmare, and luckily one I've never had to experience, because I read books on systems and workflows and processes and stuff. So that is definitely the first thing you should get down if you want to get into editing professionally. It is super important. And the one thing that I learned very quickly is limit how many different methods of communication you deal with. Because I've had a client that was like emailing me, texting me, Facebook message, Slack, and you're trying to think, oh God, didn't they say they wanted to do an extra episode this week? So you check email, it's not there, but you forgot that it was in a text from a month ago. And like, if people want to talk to me, they're not calling me, because I will not write it down and I will not remember. They are either emailing me on a very specific email that I deal with clients on, or they are on Slack, and that's it. That's the only way I will communicate with people.
Wow, yeah. So Barry, of course, is here with me. Barry, what do you think about the fact that some clients will just email you, like they'll reach out to you on like 9 different apps and phones and texts and everything? What do you think about that whole situation?
That's frightening.
I know, dude. It really is. I mean, So yeah, it happens to me too. Even people some people love that though. Some, like, I have a very good friend who I don't know if it's boredom or what, but he, for some reason, like almost every time he reaches out to me, it's on a different platform. And I'm like, wait, who is this? Like, oh, hey man, like what? Like, why are you like just pick a couple.
Did you just kick me? Are we 14-year-olds again? Like, right? WhatsApp? What?
It's so weird. It's like, I don't know, but different people operate differently. Yeah. But of course, when you're producing a bunch of episodes for a bunch of different clients, being organized that's it. That's the game. That's the first thing you got to do, period, because that enables everything else. Definitely.
Yeah. And I'm such a data junkie. I mean, I have charts and pie graphs, and I mean, every podcast I've ever produced, I know everything about it. From like, my favorite thing to look at is the ratio of raw audio in minutes to how many minutes I took to edit it. And that there's a lot to glean from that. And I can tell, like, I remember the week that I switched on I use a Kensington SlimBlade trackball. And it's really good for, like, I put out so many shows, like I would get RSI in like half a minute if I was using a traditional mouse. So if you keep the wrist stationary and just kind of roll the trackball with, I use like my second knuckle on my middle finger here. And then you have 4 buttons on either side, and they're programmed to do my most used things. And the week that I switched my bottom right one to shuttle lock speed, which increases the rate of your playback, I had to take my hand off of the mouse, with my left hand hit Option, and then my right hand hit the numeric button 9 in order to do the shuttle speed. So I'm moving my hand, 8 inches. It requires 2 hands, And I mean, it is the difference of milliseconds, but when you're doing it 1,500 times every episode, 4 times a day, 20 times a week, like that really, really adds up. And you can actually see it on my chart the week that I switched. All I did was reduce one button, one click, and it makes a difference, man. Stuff like that I love it. I feed on that, the little productivity and efficiency hacks. And editing is such a repetitive task that you need to be trimming milliseconds anywhere that you can, reducing clicks anywhere that you can. And I love hopping on like the Reddit forums and giving out my little program sequences and stuff to try to help people move a little quicker, because a lot of people are bogged down by how long it takes to edit. So there's a million ways to reduce that time. And I just want to share it with the world, man. It's so important.
Right. Yeah. The way I do it is not very optimized. I mean, I just have a regular mouse and a regular keyboard, and I mean, I do have some keyboard shortcuts that help a lot, but yeah, but I also don't edit the volume that you're editing.
Right.
So I wanted to ask you about, I just said it. I wanted to ask you about, now I forgot. How do you handle, like, what's the most time you've spent on trying to, like, you get a track from a client, and let's say the guest was connected through the internet or something, and it just sounds horrendous. Like, how long do you spend normally on tracks you get that sound absolutely horrendous?
I only mix or process whatever in real time. So I'm not like bringing stuff into Isotope and brushing noises out and doing stuff like that. If it needs a lot of work, I'll just throw another instance of denoise into the chain and just kind of let it go. So if something is really, really bad, I'll maybe spend an extra 5 to 10 minutes, mostly on EQ is where I spend most of the time trying to clean something up, because I just let RX do what it does.
Right.
I think, though, when something sounds really bad, you can't really edit at the same speed. Like, I'm usually going pretty fast on the shuttle lock speed, so you have to slow it down a little bit because things are jumbled and words are being cut in and out. It's hard to tell really what's going on. So I mean, the better the tracks sound, the less time you definitely do spend, but it's not a ton more time if something sounds really, really bad.
Okay. And what if someone's really noisy, like when they're not speaking? They're just like banging stuff around on their desk and all that. Like, you remove all that?
Oh, that's the most important part of my process that I totally left out. It is the only thing that I really do before I start editing, and that's strip silence. Are you familiar with I know some DAWs use different terms for it, but it's like just deleting the audio. So, right now you're not talking. If I had the clip, I would just delete everything while I'm talking. So if you sniff or you bang around on the mic, it doesn't come through.
Right.
And what strip silence does, it kind of like automates that. It kind of works like a noise gate in a way, but you are, rather than kind of throwing a plug in and just kind of hoping it's doing a good job, it's non-destructive, but it just cuts the audio out. So I'll set a threshold of negative 29 decibels, 350 milliseconds. After the signal drops below 29 decibels, it gives it 300 milliseconds before it cuts the audio out, because I like to have a longer fade coming out of audio, and it's usually a little quicker coming into it, like 150 milliseconds. And I just kind of rip through, do a batch fade on those just to like the initial cleanup, so I'm not getting sniffles and sneezes and coughs. And that's the first thing I do. It takes like 3 or 4 minutes to do a 60-minute podcast. I know a lot of people are like, I can't do it. It takes too long. It takes like 45 minutes. It takes an hour. If you get your flow down, you can do it in 3 minutes. I promise you. And that makes sure that it's the cleanest, most focused conversation that you can really have. And you can visually see what audio is going to be there and what's not. Whereas with a signal chain plugin, you kind of just hope that it's cutting out the right things and leaving in the right things. I never trust a noise
if someone
gate.
coughs, though, won't that open up? It'll think that goes above minus 29 threshold, right?
Right. It will. So it'll leave that audio in there, but it's kind of easy to tell like what is.
Oh, okay.
So you can just delete it. Like I'll go through the entire track, and if there's a big spike, I'll listen to it, see what it is, and if it's a cough, just delete it.
Got it.
Yeah, so it's automated with a little bit of cleaning up, but altogether shouldn't take more than 4 minutes. I once did a 7-hour podcast in like 15 minutes, just ripping through with strip silence. And they recorded in the same room, so you get mic bleed. So I always cut the other signal as well. If it's not the microphone being spoken into, the audio's gone.
Right. And how do you level the different voices? I'm assuming you do it by ear. I mean, the way I do it is partially in prepping the raw track, but then also by ear, obviously. How do you do it?
Yeah, I see the term normalize a lot, and I've never understood it. I've never done it before. I just, you get the track and...
Well, normalize is I think normalize is, I haven't used it in a long time, but normalize is like setting a track to a certain RMS level, I thought.
It sets... You basically set a peak level, so you want the highest point of that track to just be set to, -1 decibel. And then it doesn't do any dynamics processing on that track. It just raises everything evenly. So it's essentially the same thing as pushing up your volume fader.
Got it.
Except you're giving it a limit for the peak to go to. But a peak in a podcast could be a cough, or it could be a laugh, or clapping your hands or knocking the microphone. So it's not like I've never seen the point in it. I know where the track should be, and then I just set it there. I don't really do any prep work. Just throw the compressor on there, the dynamics plugins, take a peek at WLM, make sure it's close to -16, and then I'll always listen to another podcast to get the levels even and make sure it's sounding good, because when you're just listening to one thing for so long, your ears kind of just get used to how it sounds, and you lose track of like how it actually should sound.
Yeah.
So always take breaks, A/B, compare it to other things that are objectively good, and just kind of go from there.
But what if one of the tracks you get from your clients, let's say, is really low?
Yeah, I'll just throw the makeup gain on the compressor up, throw the volume fader up, and make sure to take out any extra noise that would come with that. But usually I'm getting, I had this one client actually that would send me audio tracks at like -50 LUFS. Ooh. And I had to that is so much makeup gain, and the noise that comes with it was like unbearable. And I eventually just stopped working with them because they were on like episode 40 and still couldn't get the gain figured out. So I don't want to say I'm an a-hole about stuff, but like I don't want to put up with stuff that makes me like work extra hard to make it sound decent. So I'm currently in the process of trying to filter through, let go of some of the shows that just aren't like that I don't want my name attached to. Like that sounds so critical, but like there's definitely some shows that I feel like would be damaging to my reputation if people found out that I did.
Right.
Because garbage in, garbage out, no matter what skills you have or what plugins you have, there's just only so much you can do,
Yeah, that's definitely not even close to a-hole behavior. I mean, that's called a professional. As a professional, you can only reach down so far to help people. You can't reach you can't go all the way to the bottom. I mean, you just can't. There's other people who will do that, and they want to do that, and they need to do that. But as a professional, why would we do that? We wouldn't. So that's totally, I think that's totally fine.
And I mean, I started there with my standards like a little bit lower, just trying to get income rolling in because I like really wanted to quit my job. And I was working like 80 hours a week between editing mostly full time and working. I was working at Tesla, working like 55 hours a week or something, in addition to like putting out 7 or 8 episodes on top of that. So I was trying to get just anything so I could, roll that into more podcasts, less Tesla. And eventually, back in March 1st, I think I quit to go full-time podcasting. And man, I feel like the luckiest dude in the world. And even with the shows that I have to suffer through, anyone who can edit a podcast for a living is the luckiest person in the world. And it's probably built on the back of a lot of very hard work. And we should all appreciate the gift that we have, that we've worked for, and the life we're living. It's something else, man. I'm so lucky, dude.
I agree, man. Much gratitude.
For sure. But, I'm currently in the process of wanting to edit less, educate a little more, and really focus on, I'm like really obsessed with acoustics right now. I reached out to a few different acoustical engineering companies in the area, and I want to do like really detailed tests of like different absorption materials and trying to figure out noise reduction coefficients. And
nice.
I've got a few books on like the master handbook of acoustics, and there's like a lot more high level stuff that I'm interested in. So I'm trying to get more into consulting, working on some pretty like niche video courses as well in order to let someone else handle most of the editing. And I'll go out and try to, like you, make sure that podcasts that do go out sound better. Like I really, really want to raise the standards of audio quality in podcasting, because it sounds harsh, but I just feel like they're in the gutter right now. And, the world that we came from in music production and audio engineering, people gladly will pay $10,000 for something to sound 2% better. And people in podcasting, a lot of them won't pay $100 to sound 50% better.
Yeah.
And I think it's a culture that is just kind of sad. The lack of understanding of why this stuff matters. Like, USC put out that article that everyone's been talking about when PhD candidates or whatever give a speech and the audio quality is reduced, people believe them less.
Right.
And there's a lot of like really interesting psychoacoustics that go into all that. But I want people to really understand that like this stuff is important. It's not just you and 8 friends around your cell phone, talking in your kitchen. Like you can do that and it would be a podcast, but like we should all strive for more, strive to do better. And to me, it's ultimately more respectful to the audience. Like, in music, you're begging people to listen to a 3.5 minute song. In podcasting, people feel like they're owed 60 minutes a week of someone's attention. The least you can do is give them something that's pleasant to listen to. So that's where I want to start kind of pivoting and switching into a little more educational stuff. Cause you're out there doing a really great thing. A lot of other people are. There's unfortunately a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of paid misinformation, and just need more people who really, really have the skills, have the experience and the knowledge to go out there and try to change the culture of podcasting and how it's performed and perceived by the public. Because we still have a lot of room to grow just in terms of potential audience to reach to, and everything just needs to get better, man. And we're only going to get better if we all get better together. So start striving to do more and to do better. That's what I think.
That's awesome, man. I'm with you. I'm on board. So I'm gonna make a comment about the Blue Yeti in a second, but first I want to say thank you, Tom. Obviously, from Clean Cut Audio. So everyone can go to cleancutaudio.com, and you can also listen to your show Reminiscent or Podcast Me Anything. And what's the other show?
It's called Podcarnage Inside the Author's Studio, which was a little riff off of Libsyn's podcast. That one hasn't been updated in a while, but we're writing a sequel, so we're going to be a little more active on that if you're into the process of writing adventure novels.
Podcarnage. I love that.
Yeah. So the first book was called Ron Carnage. So the show... God, the book was weird, man. It's a fun book. That's on Amazon too. If you go to actually tomkelly.co, you'll find a bunch of links of like where you can find absolutely everything about me, everything that I'm working on, including Clean Cut, and all my podcasts are up on there too. So that's a good place to send people for sure.
Cool. tomkelly.co. So
yeah,
so check the show notes. You can click on that link. The only thing I wanted to say about the Blue Yeti is that, me and others quite often kind of make fun of the Blue Yeti, mostly because it's just funny. But I do agree that it is a good mic. In fact, from a raw audio perspective, I think it's a very good mic. And the thing that I always say, and I just want to be clear on, is that it's a good mic, but it's not always the correct mic to use. And then in addition to that, people they use it the wrong way. And it just, so there's ways that people, there's a lot of ways people misuse it. And that's why it ends up not sounding great. When I was producing the entire, Forbes network a few years ago, and they bought all Blue Yetis for all their hosts, and it was like a nightmare for me because they were recording in these conference rooms in New York with like taxi cabs right outside the window honking and people sitting 7 feet away from the microphone. It's like, for me, like that was a nightmare because it was the wrong mic. So, but in general, it is a good mic. So, Tom, what do you have to say about the Blue Yeti?
I am a Blue Yeti apologist. I will die on that hill. So here's the thing. I don't think it's like the most amazing microphone, but what you're saying, these people talking in a conference room 7 feet from the microphone, that's not a Blue Yeti issue. That is a function of how a microphone is supposed to work. Like if you had a Neumann U87, what are those, $3,700 at this point? And you used it improperly, it would have the exact same issues that a Blue Yeti has. So it's not the microphone, it's how it's being used. And that's true of everything in audio. So people like to bash the microphone, and I never say it out loud because, again, I have a tendency to come off pretty abrasive. But when people say the Blue Yeti sucks, my thought is, no, you suck. If you need to know how to use it. And
but in defense of that, though, they do show, well, first of all, they had a tweet recently that showed 3 women with 3 Blue Yetis in front of them, and the Yetis were obviously sitting on the desk, and they were pointing right at the people. So they're showing it in their own marketing pointed the wrong way. And the other thing is, it's a desktop microphone. So what they say is, just put it on the desk, put it anywhere.
Yeah.
So they are sort of promoting this fact that, hey, just put it on a desk anywhere, and that's your great mic. And so, but I do agree with you. If you put it's not the mic, it's more the company in a way that's sort of promoting it that way.
Yeah, and it has the cool colors, so people want it, and the way they market it. I do think a lot of things about it are done improperly, but the way people approach the microphone is that it's the microphone's fault. Like, if you put that microphone in the hands of an audio engineer, you probably wouldn't be able to tell it apart from any other high-end microphone. But
right.
It's just like the weird meme of it, the culture behind it. It's the easy thing to pick on, but it's doing its job. People aren't doing theirs, including Blue. So that's the hill I choose to die on. And my co-host uses a Blue Yeti, and I have my whatever thousands of dollars signal chain, and they both sound super tight. So with experience, anything could sound great.
Yeah, exactly. So we agree on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So get experienced. Like, that's, don't blame. People like to choose a microphone, say my room sounds like trash. What microphone should I get? It's like, well, you're getting ahead of yourself. Make your room sound good. Don't pick a microphone to fix your room. Fix the room. Fix the source.
That's the thing. That's the one thing it's sort of unfortunate what happened, that all of a sudden the Blue Yeti became the microphone you use for a podcast. Like, I think that is definitely very, very unfortunate because, like I said, in most cases, it's not the correct microphone. So just somehow in the market, they became this mic became the mic you get. And so anyone asks online, like, I'm going to start a podcast, what should I get? And 19 idiots who don't know anything are going to be like, get the Blue Yeti. Like, they don't know the room they're in. They don't know how many guests are in person. Like, no one knows anything. But yet they're willing to advise on what mic you should get. Really? And the reason is because everyone else does it. That's why they're doing it.
Yeah, I have a blog post on my website that's like, stop listening to your friend who has a cousin who did a podcast once. Like, there aren't objective answers of what's the best microphone. It depends on so many things. Right. And the thing that I hate to see in forums is answers to questions. Like, there should be questions to questions. What microphone should I get? There's, what's your budget? What's your environment look like? What's your voice sound like? What's it sound on 7 different microphones? Like, there cannot be a single answer to anything in podcasting or audio without like 10 qualifying questions. That's what drives me the craziest. And that's exactly what you're saying. What mic should I get? Blue Yeti, done and done. That's not how it works. So, and it kind of was an unfortunate one to land on, because in defense of the contrarians or whatever, it's not a very forgiving microphone, as condensers are not, because they're not meant to be. So it's, there's a lot of unfortunate things in podcasting, but that's, what we're trying to fix here. And we're trying to, put a lot of knowledgeable producers in the world to hopefully in the next few years see a huge rise in quality overall. Cause it's got to happen, man. It's got to happen.
Yeah, it's happening slowly for sure. For sure. I think it's happening. All right. Well, Tom Kelly, Clean Cut Audio. Thanks for coming on the show, brother.
Man, thanks for having me. I was really looking forward to it. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. And at the very end, if you wouldn't mind, if you could yell "sound great" with me, I would be much obliged.
Let's do it.
All right. So anyway, everyone listening, I want you in your car, in your house, in your backyard, wherever you are, to yell "sound great." And thanks for listening. We'll see you next episode. And go! Sound great!
Yeah! No way. Oh, great. Forget it.
You walk away from me well, and you can't play that part so well. Why do you play it out on me now? You like to lose control well. It's quite a feeling, isn't it? They're floating, drifting down now. You tell me that you found something better. How should I respond to that? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. What do you want me to say? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. You react some empathy. You change your attitude well. You say I just don't get it now. You say your eyes so far away now. You gave up on me well. So change your game and give away. You say I wouldn't understand now. You tell me that you found something better. How should I respond to that? Oh yeah, I say now it's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. What do you want me to say? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. You react so angry. I want you to know you were always peaceful. I gone over all we've been through. Doesn't seem that long a time now. Things we did still hold that meaning. And does it mean it's still the same? You're pushing me away. You work your theories now where you're getting worked up on your now. You work your way around somehow now. Yes, it hurts me now where that you don't talk to me enough. Now that these words have split apart now. You tell me that you found something better. How should I respond?